The Mansion's Malevolent Game. The night was meant for fun and scares as our group of 6 friends, 3 couples, ventured into the ominous mansion on the outskirts of town. Josh and I, along with Emma and Mark, and Claire and Mike, were eager for a thrilling Halloween adventure. Little did we know, it would turn into a night of terror and revelation. The mansion loomed before us, its windows shattered and ivy crawling up the crumbling walls. With nervous laughter and flashlights in hand, we stepped inside, expecting jump scares and spooky props. As we explored room after room filled with eerie artifacts and faded portraits, the atmosphere grew tense, but we dismissed it as part of the haunted house experience. We reached a grand hall where an ominous figure stood, cloaked in shadows, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. Josh chuckled nervously and nudged me. "Nice costume. You almost got us." Emma smirked and stepped forward, her voice laced with mock bravado. "Yeah, who are you supposed to be?" The ghost of Halloween passed. But the figure remained silent, its form flickering as though it existed on the edge of reality. Claire, sensing an opportunity to up the scare factor, playfully shoved Mike towards the figure, urging him to go check it out. Mike stumbled forward, his laughter echoing through the hall. "All right, spooky ghost, show us what you got." But before anyone could react, the figure moved with unnatural speed, its movements fluid and swift. In an instant, it grabbed Mike by the throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying strength. Emma screamed, her voice echoing in the empty hall as we watched in horror. "Stop! Let him go!" Mark shouted, rushing forward to intervene. The figure's grip tightened, its eyes burning into ours with a chilling intensity. "You dare mock the spirits that dwell in this place?" it hissed, its voice reverberating through the hall like a malevolent echo. Terror gripped us as the figure forced us to our knees, its presence overpowering in its menace. "To leave this place alive," it intoned, "you must reveal your deepest secrets." Emma's eyes widened in fear as the figure began to unravel her addiction to gambling, a habit that had spiraled out of control, leading to debts that had cost her and Mark their apartment. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her deception weighed heavily upon her. Mark's face contorted with anguish as the figure exposed Emma's infidelity, an affair that had lasted for 5 agonizing months with his own sibling, shattering the trust that had once defined their family bond. Claire trembled as the figure whispered about her impending surgery, a dangerous procedure to remove a tumor that had gone undetected until it threatened her life. The stark reality of her mortality hung heavy in the air, her fear palpable to us all. Desperation consumed us as we stumbled over our confessions, each word a painful admission of our darkest truths. The mansion seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, its walls closing in around us as the figure absorbed our secrets with an insatiable hunger. As the weight of our secrets hung heavy in the air, the figure's malevolent presence intensified. Its eyes gleamed with a sinister resolve as it spoke again, its voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Now, prove yourselves worthy to leave this place," it commanded, its tone cold and commanding. "Only 3 may survive." Confusion and fear gripped us as the implication of its words sank in. This wasn't just about revealing our secrets, it was a twisted game of survival. Emma clutched Mark's arm, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What do you mean? We told you everything." But the figure remained unmoved, its gaze piercing through us with unnerving intensity. "Fight," it ordered, gesturing towards each other with a flick of its hand. "Fight for your lives." Panic erupted among us as realization dawned, there was no escape unless we complied. Josh and I exchanged a desperate glance, our hearts pounding with dread. "We can't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling with fear. Mike, his face twisted with anguish, stepped forward with a determined look in his eyes. "We have no choice," he muttered through gritted teeth. "We have to fight." Without warning, chaos erupted as the 6 of us, once friends bound by trust, were now pitted against each other in a desperate struggle for survival. Emma screamed as Mark lunged towards her, his movements fueled by a mix of fear and determination. Claire and Mike fought side by side, their faces etched with a grim resolve as they faced off against Josh and me. The mansion echoed with the sounds of shouts and cries, the air thick with a palpable sense of betrayal and desperation. I dodged a blow from Josh, my mind reeling with disbelief at the situation we had been thrust into. "I'm sorry," he gasped, tears streaming down his face as he swung at me again. Emma stumbled backwards, her eyes wide with horror as she realized the true nature of the figure's game. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice raw with anguish. "We can't keep doing this." But the figure remained impassive, its presence looming over us like a dark specter. It watched with a cold detachment as the fight raged on, its gaze unwavering as it witnessed the depths of our desperation and betrayal. Minutes stretched into eternity as exhaustion set in, our bodies battered and bruised from the merciless struggle. Claire collapsed to her knees, tears mingling with sweat as she looked around at the devastation wrought by the figure's cruel game. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the figure's voice echoed through the chaos. "Enough." With a wave of its hand, the mansion seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, enveloping 3 of us, Josh, Emma, and Mike, in a blinding light. They cried out in terror as their forms twisted and contorted, transforming into entities bound to the mansion's dark will. Horror gripped those of us left standing, Mark, Claire, and myself, as we watched in disbelief. The figure turned to us, its gaze heavy with a chilling finality. "You have survived," it intoned, its voice reverberating through the hall. "You are mine now." Mark and Claire clung to each other, their faces pale with shock and grief. "What have we done?" Mark whispered, his voice hoarse with anguish. But there was no time for answers as the mansion began to shimmer and fade, its walls melting away like mist. We stumbled outside, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and disbelief. The night air was cold and unforgiving as we stood in stunned silence, staring at the empty space where the mansion had once stood. And as we watched, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of our stomachs, the realization that the mansion, and the malevolent entity within it, had moved on to claim its next victims. We were left to grapple with the horrors we had witnessed, haunted by the memory of our friends who had been lost to the darkness that lurked within the mansion's walls. Haunted by guilt and sorrow, we clung to each other, knowing that our lives had been forever changed by the inexplicable being that had crossed our path on that fateful Halloween night.